Welcome to the debate. Today we are looking at, well, a modern professional crisis. I mean, what happens when the cost of sounding like a visionary executive just drops to absolute zero?
Right. We are looking at a reality where anyone can generate a flawless professional surface. A resume, a biography, a cover letter in a matter of milliseconds. And it sounds completely authoritative.
Which brings us directly to our source material today. We are examining the Living Professional Record Academy, specifically their Module 7 doctrine titled AI as Translator, Not Authority. But before we dive into the doctrine, we should probably briefly define our terms.
Yeah, setting the baseline is crucial here.
Right. So a living professional record, or an LPR, is not a marketing document. It is meant to be an evidence-based, verified, and audited timeline of a professional's actual career. It is the raw truth of what you did.
And the tension we are exploring today is what happens when we unleash generative AI on that raw, messy truth.
Exactly. Our central question is this. When AI can generate highly polished, perfectly grammatical, professional language instantly, how should we treat that fluency? I argue that AI's fluency is inherently deceptive. Because polish never proves truth, AI must be strictly bound by upstream governance before it ever generates a single word.
And I come at it from a different way entirely. I argue that AI's fluency, even when it oversteps into what we might call inflation, is a vital market translation tool. It simply requires rigorous downstream auditing rather than, total upfront restriction.
Well, let me clearly lay out my position on this. Module 7 is the AI governance module for LPR advisors, and my stance is anchored entirely in its core doctrine. Fluency is not evidence.
The core doctrine, right.
Yes. We have to fundamentally understand what generative AI is doing here. Large language models are probabilistic token predictors. When you ask an AI to write a resume bullet based on your notes, it is not looking at your truth.
It's just doing math.
Exactly. It's just mathematically predicting the most likely next word based on billions of data points. And most of those points are highly inflated internet profiles. It will seamlessly invent metrics, elevate your seniority, and inflate outcomes. Because that is what its training data tells it a quote-unquote good resume looks like.
Right, but I think you're...
Just to finish the thought, because AI does this so smoothly, advisors have to treat that polish as a massive liability. The primary directive has to be constraint. We must use what the doctrine calls safe source packets to ensure the AI is never allowed to generate claims unmoored from the record. The record governs AI. AI does not govern the record.
Look, you're framing AI's predictive nature strictly as a liability, but that completely misses its core value in this ecosystem. AI cannot decide truth, I agree with that, but its supreme strength lies in its role as a translator.
A translator that hallucinates facts?
A translator that bridges a gap. Think about the countless professionals who possess incredible raw skills, but genuinely struggle to describe their work in the vocabulary of their target market. The highly polished, sometimes slightly generic output that AI produces isn't a malicious lie. It is a structural hypothesis.
A hypothesis?
Yes, it provides a machine-readable and human-believable signal. If we force the AI to perfectly match the raw, messy evidence from the very start, we neuter its ability to suggest the very vocabulary the market is demanding. The goal shouldn't be to put the AI in a straitjacket up front.
But the doctrine explicitly...
The goal is to use its output as a draft, right? A hypothesis, which the human advisor then rigorously verifies and scales back to the record.
Let's test that idea of the structural hypothesis then, because I think you are vastly underestimating the danger of what happens when you treat AI as this unconstrained drafting partner. When you look at a stunning three-dimensional architectural rendering of a new skyscraper, there is this immediate sense of awe.
Sure.
You see the light reflecting off the flawless glass facade, the perfect proportions, the people walking around the plaza in the evening glow. It looks completely finished. It looks real.
It's incredibly persuasive. I mean, you want to buy the penthouse immediately.
Precisely. But here's the catch. That beautiful rendering tells you absolutely nothing about the structural engineering. It doesn't tell you if the foundation is deep enough or if steel can withstand hurricane-force winds.
Right.
It doesn't tell you if the building will just collapse under its own weight. It is a picture of an outcome completely divorced from the physical evidence required to build it. The polish creates an illusion of structural integrity. And this is exactly what happens with AI and professional documentation.
But without that architectural rendering, the client doesn't even know what building the market wants to buy.
Let me anchor this back to the text, because the doctrine gives us a perfect example of why this is perilous. It is what we call clip 2. Fluency is not evidence.
Ah, yes, clip 2.
AI can make unsupported language sound polished. That is why fluency is not evidence. A sentence may sound confident, professional, and impressive while still being completely unsupported.
I'm not denying it sounds impressive.
Right, but look at the example. If AI writes, "led enterprise-wide transformation," the advisor must ask what evidence supports led, enterprise-wide, and transformation. Polish does not prove truth. The advisor's job is to check every AI-generated claim against the record.
And usually the answer is that the evidence doesn't support it perfectly. Usually they, maintained an issue tracker during a software rollout. They didn't lead an enterprise transformation.
Right, so you can see the point. Polish does not prove truth, but if you build your professional service on invented outcomes, the entire structure collapses during a rigorous interview. AI will casually throw in verbs like spearheaded, revolutionized, or pioneered.
Yes, it will.
It will invent metrics out of thin air, claiming reduced ramp time by 20% when there is zero evidence of a metric in the source material. Why would we invite that kind of structural failure into the drafting process at all?
I am not conceding the point. I am pointing out the mechanism of translation. You are looking at led enterprise-wide transformation and seeing a dangerous lie. I am looking at it and seeing a bridge.
A bridge to a falsehood.
No, a bridge to understanding the market. Yes, it is inflated, but it tells the advisor and the client something vital. It reveals that the target market is looking for leadership, scale, and change management. The AI is pulling from its vast training data to say, hey, this is what people in this lane sound like.
But they aren't in that lane if they don't have the evidence.
Let's look at a practical example that explains the how behind this translation. Take a military veteran transitioning to civilian life.
Well, the doctrine does highlight the translation gap for career changers, yes?
Right, and it's profound. A military veteran might have raw notes in their record that say they managed the motor pool logistics for a battalion movement. Now, to a civilian applicant tracking system or to a corporate HR recruiter scanning resumes for 6 seconds, that language might as well be written in a foreign language.
True. It doesn't map perfectly.
It doesn't map to their expectations at all. If you let the AI translate that without locking it down in your straitjacket, it might generate directed global supply chain operations and optimized logistics. Now, did they direct global supply chain operations?
Absolutely not.
Maybe not in those exact corporate terms, but the AI just provided the vocabulary of the target role family. It gave us the word optimized and the phrase supply chain operations.
But it's a lie.
No, the human advisor's job is to take that inflated rendering and scale it back to the truth. Perhaps they change it to coordinated supply chain logistics while keeping the market-relevant vocabulary. The AI bridged a massive cultural gap.
Okay, you are acting as if downstream auditing could magically fix the psychological damage of the initial lie that fundamentally misunderstands human psychology, which the LPR Academy actually takes very seriously.
How does it damage the psychology?
There is a deeply documented psychological anchoring effect at play here. When a client sees that beautifully rendered sentence, directed global supply chain operations, they get anchored to it. They think, wow, I sound like a vice president. I want to use that.
Well, they want to get hired.
Right, but then the advisor has to play the bad cop and rip it away, which creates friction and resentment. You are allowing the AI to introduce falsehoods into the environment, hoping the human will catch them and that the client will just accept the downgrade. Why let the contagion in at all?
Because that friction isn't a bug. The friction is the feature.
Wait, so you're arguing that the friction of rejecting the machine's lies is actually the intended mechanism? That the act of correcting the AI is what forces the client to realize their actual value?
Yes, exactly. That is precisely why the LPR Academy mandates the AI output claim check and the rejected AI claims log as a capstone requirement for advisor certification. I mean, if total upfront restriction was the only way, the Academy wouldn't build an entire infrastructure around rejecting false claims.
That just proves my point about the risk.
No, it proves the system expects the AI to get things wrong. It expects inflation. The learning, the actual governance, happens in the rejection process.
But the doctrine champions strict upstream governance to prevent that from being necessary in the first place. I'm talking about the absolute necessity of the source-bound prompt. You do not prompt AI from desire, you prompt it from the record.
But a strict prompt.
A weak prompt is, make this sound impressive for an operations manager role. That is explicitly asking the AI to hallucinate. A source-bound prompt says, using only the evidence provided below, create 3 possible resume bullets. Do not invent metrics, titles, scope, or outcomes. Use the verbs coordinated or supported unless the evidence clearly supports led. You manage expectations from the very start.
And when you do that, you artificially restrict the AI from doing the very thing it is best at, which is pattern matching against the broader market. Let's go back to the onboarding example from the text.
Okay.
The client created a shared onboarding checklist for one team during high turnover. If you let the AI stretch its legs a bit, it might output spearheaded enterprise onboarding transformation, reducing ramp time and improving cross-functional alignment.
Which again, violates clip 2. It's not evidence.
But watch the process. The advisor looks at that output, performs the AI output claim check, and identifies it spearheaded as unsupported, enterprise as unsupported, reducing ramp time as an invented metric. So they revise it down to created a shared onboarding checklist for one team during a high turnover period.
Right, so why not just write that in the first place? I mean, why go through the theater of having the AI lie to you just so you can correct it? It is entirely inefficient.
Because in that process of generation and rejection, the advisor and the client discover the boundaries of the claim. Look at what else the AI suggested. It said cross-functional alignment.
Which was probably invented.
But that phrase prompts the advisor that asks the client, hey, did you actually align different functions when you made this checklist? And the client might realize, actually, yes, I had to get HR and IT to agree on the checklist format before I could publish it.
So you're relying on a lucky hallucination.
I'm relying on an iterative drafting partner. The AI's overreach just helped reconstruct valuable operational context that was entirely missing from the raw notes. If you lock it in a cage with a strict source-bound prompt that explicitly forbids it from suggesting anything outside the raw notes, you lose that exploratory translation value.
Well, I see the utility in prompting the client's memory, sure. But let's pause on that assumption that the AI's output is always a helpful, market-calibrated suggestion. Let's talk about the specific issue of what the doctrine calls AI generic language.
Okay, fair point.
Even if we successfully catch the outright lies with these claim checks, we're still left with a secondary, perhaps more insidious problem. The AI doesn't just invent facts, it homogenizes personality.
You're talking about the word salad effect.
I am absolutely talking about the word salad. The AI churns out phrases like, results-driven professional with a proven ability to leverage cross-functional collaboration and strategic execution to deliver measurable impact.
Oh, I've read 1,000 of those.
Right. It is grammatically perfect, and it means absolutely nothing. It is completely devoid of what the doctrine calls operational texture. There is no context, no specific role, no object of work, no tangible evidence. It makes everyone sound exactly the same.
I agree that's a risk.
This is the profound danger of relying on AI as your translator. It translates everyone into the same beige, featureless corporate dialect. It removes the very specificity that makes a candidate trustworthy to a human hiring manager.
Look, that is a highly valid critique of raw AI output. But you are looking at the AI's output as a final destination. I am looking at it as scaffolding. Yes, it produces generic language if left unchecked. But again, this is precisely why human review is mandatory and why the doctrine insists that the client owns the final representation.
But if the scaffolding is weak?
The AI provides the machine-readable part of the signal. Let's be brutally honest about the modern hiring landscape. We live in a world of algorithmic screeners and recruiters who scan a resume in 6 seconds. The AI is incredibly good at structuring information so that it travels cleanly through those systems.
But machine readable is not enough. The doctrine makes it very clear that the rendering must be human believable.
And that is exactly where the advisor and the record come in. The AI builds the machine-readable structure, and the human re-injects the human-believable trust and specificity. If the AI gives you that generic, results-driven professional line, the advisor uses the record to replace measurable impact with the actual operational texture.
Like the issue tracker?
Exactly. Like maintaining an issue tracker during a digital tool rollout. The AI gives you the structural format. The record gives you the truth.
Well, if the human has to rewrite the sentence anyway, to add the operational texture, why are we relying on the AI to generate the generic scaffolding in the first place? I mean, it seems we are doing twice the work to accommodate a machine that fundamentally does not know what is true.
Because starting from a blank page is the hardest part of the process for most people. The AI overcomes the terror of the blank page. It categorizes the captured evidence. It suggests how a situation, action, result, interview answer could be structured.
So it's just a glorified template generator.
It's vastly easier for a human to look at a generic, structurally sound AI draft and say, that's not quite right, let me make it more specific, than it is to build the structure from scratch. And we log all of this. The doctrine's requirement for the AI translation log ensures we never suffer from professional amnesia.
The logs?
Yes, we track the source used, the prompt summary, the output, what we rejected, and what we accepted after revision. We maintain total provenance.
But your reliance on the AI translation log and the rejected claims log proves my fundamental point about the inherent risk of the tool. We have to build this massive bureaucratic infrastructure of logging, checking, and auditing just to ensure the machine hasn't poisoned the well.
It's called governance.
And this brings up another massive vulnerability that requires upfront restraint, which is privacy. Module 7 makes it explicitly clear that you cannot simply paste the full living professional record into an AI model. You cannot upload confidential employer files, proprietary documents, client data, or sensitive military information.
Of course not.
If you use AI as a freewheeling translation engine, you run a massive risk of exposing the very evidence you are trying to govern.
We don't disagree on the necessity of privacy. The safe source packet is a brilliant mechanism, and I fully support it. You use placeholders, you use safe summaries, you use metadata-only notes.
Right.
You explicitly write client-supported coordination for a sensitive internal process review. Instead of uploading the actual HR compliance report, you protect the evidence. But once that evidence is safely summarized and stripped of confidential data, you must let the AI help you figure out how to talk about it to the outside world.
But notice how much rigorous work happens before the AI is even engaged. I mean, the advisor has to capture the evidence, reconstruct the context, map the claims, assign what the doctrine calls claim maturity, apply privacy boundaries, and prepare the safe source packet. All of that governance happens first.
Yes, it does.
As the doctrine explicitly states, AI belongs after governance, not before. You cannot bypass the manual understanding of the client's truth.
The manual understanding is entirely non-negotiable. I agree with you there. That is exactly why the Academy differentiates between AI Assist LPR training mode and the record automated.
Which candidates can't just skip.
Right. Candidates are not allowed to just use the automated tool to blast out a full package. They have to show they understand the method underneath the automation. They have to demonstrate they can intervene when the AI suggests a claim the client cannot defend.
Because fluency is an evidence.
Exactly. Intellectual humility is required here. We have to recognize AI's profound ability to help the record speak to new audiences, provided we govern it appropriately.
Provided we govern it is, I think, the operating phrase of the entire module. If we synthesize our positions, I return to the foundational doctrine of Clip 2. Fluency is never a substitute for evidence.
Agreed.
While AI can certainly help structure our narratives and, perhaps offer a bridge to market vocabulary, it must remain entirely subordinate to the facts. The moment we allow a polished sentence to bypass human scrutiny simply because it sounds authoritative, we compromise the integrity of the living professional record. The record governs AI. AI does not govern the record.
And my position is that we cannot let the fear of AI inflation prevent us from using its incredible power as a translator. Yes, it requires rigorous downstream auditing, claim checks, and translation logs.
Significant auditing.
But when we accept its outputs not as unquestionable authority, but as structural drafts and hypotheses, we give our clients a profound advantage. We help their lived, messy, complex professional truth actually resonate in a market that demands a specific language. It is an iterative partnership.
It is a partnership that requires intense, intentional oversight. We clearly both agree that AI use is not something to be avoided. The mandatory capstone requirement proves it is central to the future of this work, but it demands profound responsibility.
It is about teaching advisors how to safely harness the machine rather than pretending the machine doesn't exist.
Ultimately, this tension between polish and truth isn't just about AI. It is about modern professional identity. We leave it to you, the listener, to ponder how you weigh the allure of polished language against the unyielding necessity of evidence in your own career footprint.
It's a tough balance.
It really is. When you are looking at your own professional surface, your resume, your bio, your digital presence, ask yourself, are you staring at a beautiful, flawless 3D architectural rendering? And if you are, what exactly is holding the building up?
Make sure the foundation is real.
Thank you for joining us on The Debate.